His laugh rang through that courtroom like a knife twisting in my chest. Brendan actually laughed, right there in front of the judge, in front of everyone. My husband of 8 years tipped his head back and laughed at me. His attorney had just finished explaining why I was an unfit mother. The judge had just signed the order giving him temporary full custody of our 2 kids. And Brendan Holloway, the man I had given my 20s and half my 30s to, leaned over and murmured that I'd be lucky to see my own children twice a month, with supervision. Like I was some sort of criminal, like I was dangerous. Me, the woman who had rocked those babies to sleep every night, who knew every allergy, every nightmare, every favorite bedtime book by heart. That woman was now officially a problem, a liability, and he laughed. My name is Alia Salinas. I was 34 years old when my entire life fell apart in a California courtroom. 34 years old, 8 years married, mother to Marisol 7 and Theo almost 6, his birthday only 2 months away, and suddenly at 34 I had nothing, no house, no kids, no savings. Just the clothes on my back and a used Toyota that sounded like a horror movie death scene every time I turned the key. My mechanic once told me the car wasn't broken, it was just expressing itself. I couldn't afford to ask anyone else for a second opinion. Let me tell you how I ended up there. And more importantly, what happened after. I met Brendan when I was 25. He was all charm and momentum, already climbing at a tech company in San Diego. I worked as a medical billing specialist at a hospital, not glamorous but solid, respectable work. My immigrant parents had drilled it into me. In America, hard work and honesty were enough. Keep your head down, do your job, treat people decently, and life would sort itself out. I believed that, I truly did. Brendan swept in like something out of a movie: nice restaurants, spontaneous weekend trips, constant compliments. He told me I was beautiful, that he'd been waiting his whole life to find me. We married when I was 26. Marisol was born a year later. Theo arrived 2 years after that. For a while, life really was what I'd dreamed: small, busy, happy. When the kids were little, Brendan suggested I cut back at work. Just go part-time, he said. For the family, the kids need you home more, I can support us. I trusted him. I thought we were a team building a shared life, so I went part-time. I ran the house, I raised our children, I made sure his life stayed smooth while he climbed higher. What I didn't know was that Brendan had been planning his exit before Theo was even born. It started small. He put me on an allowance like a teenager. Once a month, a fixed transfer hit my personal account. That money was supposed to cover food, kids' activities, my gas, everything. If I needed more, I had to ask, I had to explain. I didn't question it. My parents had a traditional marriage. My father handled the finances. I thought that was just how it worked when the man earned more. I was a fool. If I could go back, I'd grab that younger version of myself and shake her until her teeth rattled. But hindsight is 20/20, and foresight in my case was apparently legally blind. The divorce papers were served at work, not at home where I would have had some privacy, not quietly through the mail. A process server walked into the hospital billing department, said my full name, and everyone turned to watch as he put a stack of documents into my hands. Brendan wanted maximum humiliation. I should have understood everything about him right then, but it got worse. His lawyer built me into a monster, mentally unstable, neglectful, overwhelmed, incapable. Every ordinary moment of parental exhaustion became evidence. That time Marisol fell off her bike while I was tending to Theo, negligence. The permission slip I forgot to sign, irresponsible. The school event where I cried because I'd had a brutal week, emotional instability, all of it documented, all of it stored. Brendan had spent 18 months building a case against me while I'd spent those same 18 months loving him and raising his children. And he hadn't done it alone. His mother, Constance Holloway, had been quietly helping the whole time. She'd smiled at me over holiday dinners while secretly collecting proof of my failings. She de-volunteered to babysit so she could compare how the kids behaved with and without me. She snapped photos of my messy kitchen, my overflowing laundry basket, my exhausted face. She was building a file, a weapon. Constance is the kind of woman who would find fault with a sunrise. Too orange, too late, not enough vitamin D, but the betrayal that gutted me didn't come from her. It came from my own sister. Paloma testified against me, my baby sister. The girl I'd shielded our whole childhood. The woman I'd lent money to, comforted through 3 ugly breakups, called my best friend. She sat in that witness box and told the court I was always overwhelmed, quick-tempered with the kids, mentally fragile. She stared at the floor the entire time, wouldn't even meet my eyes. I felt something inside me crack in a way I knew would never fully mend. I learned later that Paloma was dating one of Brendan's colleagues. She wanted access to their world, their nights out, their restaurants, their approval. She traded me for a man and some fancy dinners. My lawyer was court-appointed. I simply couldn't afford my own. Brendan's lawyer wore a watch that probably cost more than my car, which, given my car's main feature was screams like it's dying when started, wasn't saying much, but still. My lawyer was kind, exhausted, and horrifically overmatched. She tried, her best just wasn't enough. The temporary custody order gave Brendan everything. The kids would remain in the stable environment of the family home, the $600,000 oceanside house I had helped pay for, decorated, cleaned, and filled with love. That house was now legally his. I was ordered to find suitable housing before asking for visitation. I ended up in a studio so tiny I felt like I had to step outside just to change my mind. A real estate listing would have called it cozy and efficient. Real estate agents could sell a solitary confinement cell as a wellness retreat. 1 room, 1 window. The bathroom so cramped the shower head was mounted practically above the toilet. That was my life now. That was my reward for 8 years of loyalty. But something else happened in that courtroom, small enough I almost missed it through the fog of shock. Brendan slid a folder to his lawyer. The lawyer casually slipped it into his briefcase and glanced around like he was checking to see if anyone had noticed. When Brendan's financial disclosures were presented, the numbers didn't feel right. His income was listed as $140,000 a year. I remembered him bragging about big bonuses, stock options, crushing it at work. Our lifestyle didn't match that number. At the time, I was too shattered to unravel it. But a seed lodged itself in my brain and stayed there. Before I go on, if this story is drawing you in, please hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment and they genuinely keep me going. Thank you for being here. The weeks after that hearing were the darkest of my life. Brendan wielded the custody order like a weapon. Every visitation became a fight. I'd drive 45 minutes to the house. He'd open the door with that fake apologetic smile. Sorry, he'd say. Marisol woke up with a stomach ache. Better for her to stay home? Or Theo's got a playdate that just came up, let's try next weekend. Next weekend, always next weekend, and when next weekend came, there was always another reason. The rare times I did see them, something was wrong. Marisol, my talkative, curious girl, went quiet. 1-word answers, eyes on her tablet the whole time. Theo clung to me and sobbed, asking why I'd left, why I didn't want to live with them anymore. Who told you that, baby? I would ask, though I already knew. Brendan was poisoning them. Night after night, he was rewriting our story in their heads. Mommy chose to leave. Mommy doesn't want you. Mommy is sick and can't take care of you. He was erasing me one bedtime at a time. And Constance turned the whole thing into a public victory lap. She treated social media like a trophy case. Pictures with my children at the zoo, on the beach, at restaurants. Captions like Grandma of the Year, blessed, family first. She moved into my house to help Brendan, which really meant she'd moved in to help finish exterminating me from my children's lives. A month after the hearing, she sent me a private message, just a few sentences I will never forget. She wrote that I had never been good enough for her son, that everyone had known it except me. That my children deserved better than a mother like you. I stared at those words on my phone for an hour, reading, rereading, wondering if maybe she was right. Meanwhile, Paloma was fully absorbed into the Holloway orbit. She showed up in Constance's photos, smiling in my kitchen, playing with my kids in my backyard. She got gifts, a new car. Her credit card debt vanished. Our mother was stuck in the middle, heartbroken, watching her two daughters stand on opposite sides of a battlefield she never understood. Money became another choking hand around my throat. Brendan's lawyer filed motion after motion to delay any spousal support, continuances, requests for more documentation. Every legal trick to keep me broke for as long as possible. I worked double shifts at the hospital just to keep up with rent and groceries. I stopped eating breakfast and lunch and told myself it was intermittent fasting for my health, but in reality it was intermittent fasting because my bank account is in a coma. 1 month. I sold my grandmother's gold bracelet, the only piece of jewelry that really mattered to me, so I wouldn't be evicted. Then I discovered that during our marriage, Brendan had opened credit cards in my name, cards I never knew existed. He'd maxed them out and then stopped paying. My credit score imploded. I couldn't qualify for a better apartment, a decent car loan, nothing. He hadn't just taken my present, he'd sabotaged my future. Work, too, turned into hostile territory. About 2 months after the divorce, we got a new supervisor, Regina Doyle. From day one, she treated me like something she'd scraped off her shoe. My schedule changed without warning. I was written up for being 3 minutes late after a 12-hour shift. My already reduced hours were slashed to nearly nothing. I thought it was bad luck until a coworker casually mentioned seeing Regina at a charity event, standing with, of course, Constance Holloway, laughing together like old friends. There are no coincidences. Brendan's influence was everywhere. It was like he had an evil villain to-do list and he was methodically checking off each item. The absolute bottom came on a Saturday in March, Theo's 6th birthday. I begged to see him. I offered every possible compromise. I'd come early, stay late, work around anything. Just let me see my son on his birthday. Brendan's lawyer sent a formal response, visitation denied due to scheduling conflicts with the planned celebration. So I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to the house, my house, the place I'd carried both my babies into when they first came home from the hospital. I parked across the street and watched. Through the windows I could see balloons, streamers, kids in party hats, Constance carrying a huge cake into the dining room. And Theo, my Theo, laughing in a room full of people celebrating his birthday without me. I sat in my car, eating gas station snacks for dinner, watching like some transparent ghost haunting a perfectly ordinary suburban scene, and I cried. The kind of crying that rips through you where you can't catch your breath and your entire body shakes, pain from a part of you you didn't even know existed. Then Brendan saw me. He walked outside, phone already in his hand, already dialing. The police showed up about 20 minutes later. The officer was calm, almost apologetic. I wasn't doing anything illegal by sitting on a public street, he explained, but Brendan had reported stalking and harassment. The officer suggested I leave before things escalated, so I left. I drove back to my shoebox apartment with its majestic view of a brick wall and wondered if this was just what my life was going to be from now on. The following week, Brendan's lawyer filed for a restraining order against me, against a mother who had dared to sit in her car and watch her son's birthday party from across the street. The paperwork called me erratic, unstable, potentially dangerous. It asked that I be barred from coming within 500 feet of the house, the kids' school, and Brendan's workplace. I was about to lose everything, not just my home and my money, but any realistic chance of ever being a real mother to my children again. Brendan was going to win completely, or so I thought. That weekend, I went to my mother's house for dinner. She had tried and mostly failed to stay neutral between me and Paloma. The strain was etched across her face. Her grandchildren were being kept at arm's length because she refused to pick a side. After we ate, she mentioned cleaning out the garage. She'd found some boxes of my stuff from years ago, back when Brendan and I moved into the house and had no storage space. "Do you want them, or should I donate everything?" she asked. I didn't feel like reliving the past, but I said I'd take them. Maybe I just needed something to do that wasn't crying. I loaded 3 dusty boxes into my moody Toyota and drove them back to my tiny place. That night, I opened them, expecting old clothes, forgotten books, wedding gifts we never used. Instead, I found a plain black external hard drive. I'd forgotten it even existed. In the early days of our marriage, when Theo was a baby, I'd sometimes help Brendan with his home office chaos, filing, organizing receipts, backing up his computer when he was busy. I'd copied a bunch of his files onto this drive as a backup, then life got busy. The drive went into a box, out of sight, out of mind. I almost tossed it without checking. Almost. Something made me plug it into my laptop. What I found changed everything. The drive held thousands of files going back 6 years, spreadsheets, emails, bank statements, legal docs. At first, it was just a blur of numbers and jargon I didn't fully understand. But the more I dug, the more the shape of it all became horribly clear. 6 years ago, around the time Theo was born, Brendan had formed an LLC with a bland, forgettable name. According to the records, that LLC had been receiving substantial monthly payments from his employer, labeled consulting fees. Those payments never appeared in our joint accounts. They never surfaced on the tax returns I signed. They were diverted somewhere else entirely. I am not a numbers person. Once I misbalanced my checkbook and spent 3 glorious hours convinced I was rich before reality corrected me. But even I could tell something was very, very wrong. I stayed up the entire night going through file after file, taking notes, cross-checking amounts. By sunrise, I had a rough total. Over 6 years, Brendan had funneled at least $850,000 through that LLC. $850,000 I never knew existed. $850,000 never disclosed in our divorce. And that still wasn't the worst part. I found emails, years of emails between Brendan and his lawyer. In one, the lawyer explicitly laid out strategies to keep the LLC invisible in the eventual divorce. Those words. The eventual divorce. Brendan had been planning to leave me while I was still nursing his son, while I was waking up at 3 a.m. for feedings. While I was living on cold coffee and no sleep, he'd been plotting how to hide money. This wasn't a man who fell out of love. This was cold, calculated, premeditated fraud. I needed help. Real, professional help, and I could barely buy groceries, let alone hire experts. I was drowning. Then I remembered someone from work. Her name was Beverly Okonkwo. She'd moved to another department, but years back she'd been some kind of financial investigator. Rumor was she'd burned out, seen too much corporate ugliness, and walked away. We weren't close, but she'd always been kind. One of the only people who hadn't treated me like a contagious disease after my public divorce humiliation. I asked if I could take her out for coffee. She said yes. We met in a corner booth at a greasy diner near the hospital. I told her everything: divorce, custody, the hard drive. I showed her screenshots of spreadsheets and emails on my phone. I expected some vague response. Complicated, hard to say, talk to a professional. Instead, Beverly stared, let out a low whistle, and set her cup down. She joked that she hadn't seen numbers that cooked since her cousin tried doing her taxes after 3 glasses of wine. Then her face went serious. "This isn't just hidden marital property," she said. "This is fraud." For the next 2 weeks, Beverly worked late nights digging through what I'd found. She blew the dust off skills she thought she'd left behind and began tracing the money. What she uncovered made my first estimate look naive. The LLC owned property, a vacation condo in Lake Tahoe I had never heard of, 4 bedrooms, lake view, hot tub on the deck, worth around $400,000. While I was selling my grandmother's bracelet to make rent, my husband had a secret vacation home. There was more. The LLC had been paying Constance consulting fees for administrative services, $72,000 over 4 years. Constance, who had never done a day of administrative work in her life. Constance, who spent her days shopping and performing her perfection online. Those payments were clearly fake, a way to shuffle money to his mother while manufacturing tax deductions. It wasn't only hiding assets from a spouse anymore, this was tax fraud, and his whole family was in it. Finding all of this changed me. I realized that no matter how deeply you love someone, you never ever hand over complete control of your financial life. Now I keep an emergency fund in my name only, accounts that are mine alone. Trust is beautiful, verification is survival. Beverly put me in touch with a former colleague, a forensic accountant named Harrison Wells. Harrison glanced over the evidence and agreed to work on a delayed payment basis. Cases like mine, he said, were exactly why he did what he did. He, in turn, connected me with a family law attorney, Diana Prescott, who specialized in divorce fraud. She worked on contingency for people precisely in my position. Diana was petite, sharp-eyed, and completely allergic to nonsense. She reminded me of a terrier, small, focused, and absolutely incapable of letting go once she latched onto something. She tore through everything Beverly and Harrison had found, peppered me with about 50 questions, and then leaned back with a smile that was almost predatory. She told me we didn't just have enough to reopen my case, we had enough to obliterate Brendan. Then she said something that surprised me: we couldn't just march into court with it. We had to be strategic. We needed Brendan to feel safe, to feel untouchable, to think he had already won. We needed him to lie under oath about assets he didn't know we knew about. We needed perjury. We were going to set a trap. For the first time in months, something other than grief stirred in me, hope, and beneath that, something raw and hot, anger. While Harrison kept digging through the financial web, he uncovered more troubling threads: credit card statements with purchases that didn't match Brendan's supposed life. Expensive jewelry I'd never been given. Hotel stays in San Francisco on weekends he'd claimed to be at conferences. Regular payments to an individual account belonging to a woman named Kendra Whitmore. Harrison tracked her down. Her social media was locked down tight, but one photo was public, a pregnancy announcement, 7 months along, posted 3 weeks earlier. Brendan had a girlfriend. He'd likely been with her at least 2 years, judging by the payments, and she was pregnant. My husband had stood in court and smeared me as an unfit mother while his mistress carried his child. He called me unstable while he built a secret life and a second family. The version of me from 8 months before would have collapsed under that news. The woman I was becoming filed it away. Another weapon, another nail in his coffin. Diana outlined the plan: we'd file a motion to modify custody and another to set aside the original judgment based on fraud. But our first filing would look weak, routine, a sad last-ditch attempt. We'd make it emotional instead of evidentiary, lots of "I miss my children, and this arrangement is harming them emotionally," very little hard data. We wanted Brendan to see it as pathetic and easily crushed. Meanwhile, she said, I had to play the part, defeated. If I ran into anyone in Brendan's orbit, I'd mention how I was thinking of moving back to Texas to be near extended family. Maybe I'd say it was time to accept that California just held too many painful memories. I accidentally let this slip to my mother, knowing she would tell Paloma, knowing Paloma would carry it straight to Brendan. I practiced my resigned face in the bathroom mirror so often that my reflection started to look worried about me. The trap was set. All I had to do was look like a woman who had finally given up. At the same time, I still had a smaller war to fight: work. Regina had been making my life miserable for months, but now I understood that nothing around me was random anymore. So I did what Brendan and Constance had done to me. I started a file. I documented every last thing, every schedule change without proper notice. Every write-up for something others did daily without consequence. Every time she singled me out in front of the team, then I filed a formal complaint with HR. I included screenshots of Regina and Constance together at charity events, photos of them tagged side by side. and a post where Constance thanked Regina for being such a wonderful friend during difficult family times. I didn't have to spell it out. The pattern spoke for itself. HR took it seriously, very seriously. Within 2 weeks, Regina was quietly transferred to a different facility across town. My hours were restored. My schedule stabilized. It was a small win, but it taught me something crucial. I could fight back, and I could win. Fancy friends don't mean much when you leave a mile-long trail of policy violations behind you. Then came the restraining order hearing. Brendan's lawyer painted me as an unstable woman stalking her own family on a child's birthday. Diana calmly presented records that Brendan had systematically blocked my legally ordered visitations for months. That his harassment complaints were really punishments for me trying to see my own kids. The judge looked through the evidence and dismissed the restraining order. Brendan looked irritated but not worried. In his mind, he was still in control. Next step, the deposition. If you've never been through one, a deposition is where lawyers question you under oath before trial. Everything is recorded. Every lie can come back to bite you. Diana scheduled Brendan's deposition under the umbrella of our custody modification motion. She labeled it as routine. Brendan showed up in an expensive suit with his expensive attorney, carrying himself like a man indulging a formality. His lawyer, who was probably charging $500 an hour, looked bored. Easiest money of his week, he thought. Diana started soft. Questions about income, assets, financial status. Did he own any businesses or have any ownership in entities outside his employer? No, Brendan said, just my salary and standard benefits. Did he own any property besides the family home? No. Just the oceanside house. Did he have any financial arrangements or regular payments to relatives? No, nothing like that. Every answer was a lie. Every answer was perjury. Every word was recorded and later certified. Brendan's lawyer barely took notes. He hadn't bothered preparing his client because, as far as he knew, there was nothing to prepare for. He didn't know about the hard drive, or Beverly, or Harrison, or the Lake Tahoe condo, or the fake consulting to Constance. Afterward, Diana and I watched the recording together. She looked like a cat that had just cornered a very large, very slow mouse. "We've got him," she said, "completely. Now we just had to be ready for the final fight." But before that, I had one personal battle left. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button. Your support really does keep me going more than you can imagine. I went to see Paloma, not at her apartment. She might not have opened the door. Instead, I found her at a coffee shop we used to go to together back when we were still sisters in more than name. She looked up from her phone, saw me, and her face cycled through about 15 emotions in 2 seconds. I sat across from her without asking. Then I took out my phone and pulled up the emails. The ones where Brendan and his colleague discussed how to leverage her, the ones where they called her a useful idiot, those exact words. The ones where they joked about how easy she was to manipulate, where her boyfriend promised to dump her once he got his promotion and she was no longer useful. Paloma read them and crumpled. Not a single pretty tear, full body, ugly crying, snot, shaking shoulders, choking apologies. She kept saying she was sorry, but I didn't want her apologies. I wanted her to understand. I told her she had helped take children from their mother for a man who was using her, for reservations at restaurants and a leased car, that our grandmother would be ashamed. I watched those words land like blows. Then I told her she had a choice. She could keep walking the road she'd chosen, lying to herself and living with the hollow spaces. Or she could try to make this right. She could sign an affidavit. She could admit to being coached and pressured, to being promised rewards in exchange for her testimony. She could tell the truth. Paloma chose the truth. 2 days later, I had a sworn affidavit in my hands. In it, she detailed exactly how Brendan and his lawyer had rehearsed her testimony, what they told her to stress, how they dangled her boyfriend's promotion in front of her like a treat. It was devastating, clear evidence of witness tampering. Their perfect case was about to explode. the week before the hearing, Diana and I did final prep. We had Harrison's full forensic report documenting every hidden dollar. We had the property records for the Lake Tahoe condo, bank statements for payments to Constance, proof of the affair with Kendra and her pregnancy, the recording of Brendan lying through his teeth in the deposition, Paloma's affidavit, everything. The night before court, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the single window in my tiny apartment, staring at the same brick wall I'd been staring at for 8 months, and I thought about the woman I'd been, the girl who trusted blindly. The wife who never asked questions, the mother who lost everything because she believed that love and loyalty were enough. I wasn't her anymore. I had been broken, yes. But I had rebuilt into something harder, sharper. Tomorrow, I promised myself, Brendan Holloway would learn what happens when you underestimate the woman you tried to destroy. The courtroom felt different this time. The last time I'd sat there, I was a hollow shell watching my life disintegrate. This time, I walked in standing straighter. Brendan arrived first with his lawyer holding a slim folder. They clearly expected an easy win. Constance sat behind them in pearls, wearing the smug smile of a woman who believes the ending is already written. Then I walked in with Diana, carrying 3 thick folders and a banker's box. Harrison followed with his own stack of files. Brendan's smirk flickered when he saw the paper. Diana's opening was brief. She stated we had evidence of fraud in the original divorce proceedings. Intentionally falsified financial disclosures, grounds to set aside the judgment and revisit custody. Harrison testified first. He methodically laid out the hidden LLC. The monthly consulting transfers from Brendan's employer. The total marital assets concealed, $862,000. Then the Lake Tahoe condo, 4 bedrooms, Lakeview, purchased through the LLC for $380,000. Entirely hidden during the marriage and divorce. Then the payments to Constance, $72,000 in administrative services that never occurred, clear tax fraud. Then Diana played the deposition. Brendan's own voice rang through the courtroom. Do you own any businesses outside your primary employment? No. Any property other than the family home? No. Any financial relationship with family members? Regular payments or transfers? No, nothing like that. Lie after lie in his own words under oath. Brendan's lawyer shot to his feet and demanded a recess. He looked furious. He walked into what he thought was a simple hearing and discovered his client had committed multiple felonies and lied to him as well. When we reconvened, Diana moved to Brendan's personal life. She presented credit card records, jewelry, hotel stays, restaurant charges, monthly transfers to Kendra, over $60,000 across 2 years. Then she introduced the pregnancy announcement, 7 months along, conceived while Brendan was still married to me and fighting for sole custody. Brendan jumped up and shouted that his personal life wasn't relevant. The judge warned him to sit down and control himself. Then Diana called my sister. My sister, Paloma, I whispered to myself as she walked to the stand. Paloma testified that Brendan and his lawyer had coached her for the original hearing. Told her to exaggerate every instance of me looking tired or stressed, to label normal parenting as concerning, to focus on my lowest moments and ignore everything else. She explained how they'd promised her boyfriend a promotion if she cooperated. She turned to me and apologized, voice breaking, telling the court how deeply she regretted what she'd done. Constance couldn't hold herself together. She leapt up and screamed at Paloma, calling her a traitor and a liar. The judge told her to sit down. She didn't. When Diana introduced the tax fraud evidence that implicated Constance directly, she snapped completely. She tried to storm the bench, shrieking that I had fabricated everything. The judge ordered the bailiff to remove her. I watched her get dragged out of the courtroom, still shouting, and I felt nothing. She no longer mattered. Diana's closing was surgical: fraud, perjury, hidden assets, witness tampering, parental alienation. She asked that the original judgment be set aside, custody be transferred to me, the family home be awarded as compensation, and the matter be referred to the district attorney. The judge called a 1-hour recess to review everything and prepare a ruling. Brendan's lawyer left the room already on his phone, probably speed dialing his malpractice insurer. Brendan sat alone at the defendant's table, staring straight ahead. The man who had laughed at me in this same room 8 months earlier now looked like someone watching his life burn down in front of him. An hour later, the judge returned. She said that in her 22 years on the bench, she had rarely seen such egregious misconduct in a divorce proceeding. The fraud was overwhelming. The perjury in the deposition was a serious criminal matter. She would be forwarding the record to the district attorney's office. Then she gave her ruling. Custody of both minor children, Marisol and Theo, was immediately and fully transferred to me, physical and legal. Brendan would have supervised visitation twice a month pending investigation into the parental alienation. Exactly what he had tried to impose on me. The family home in Oceanside was awarded to me. The judge found that the house had been paid for with income Brendan had deliberately concealed, marital income, and granted it to me as restitution for the fraud. A full forensic accounting was ordered of all assets connected to the LLC, the Lake Tahoe condo, and any other hidden accounts. Preliminary estimates suggested I would receive at least 70% of all discovered assets plus additional damages. Brendan was ordered to pay every penny of my legal fees and forensic costs. Every hour Diana worked, every spreadsheet Harrison analyzed, every late night Beverly spent tracing transfers, he would foot the bill. Child support was recalculated based on his real income, not the fake salary he disclosed. The amount was nearly triple the original order. Finally, the judge announced the case file would be referred both to the district attorney for potential criminal charges and to the state bar to investigate whether Brendan's attorney had knowingly helped conceal the fraud. Brendan didn't move. His face went from white to gray to something colorless. His expensive suit suddenly looked like it belonged to a bigger man. He'd shrunk inside it. His lawyer packed his briefcase in silence, no longer even pretending to advocate for him. When the judge was done, she looked directly at Brendan and told him she hoped he understood the cost of his choices. That he hadn't just broken laws, he'd tried to destroy the bond between two children and their mother. In her experience, she said, people who lived the way he did rarely found peace. They carried their lies with them. Then she adjourned. I stood on unsteady legs. Diana gripped my hand and told me we'd won. Harrison gave me a professional nod. 8 months of clawing my way through every day, 8 months of barely surviving, 8 months of crying alone in a studio overlooking a brick wall, and now, suddenly, it was over. As I walked toward the door, Brendan finally spoke. His voice was small, stripped of the confidence he'd always worn like armor. He asked if we could work something out, said we could find a reasonable compromise, said he'd give me anything if we could just keep this out of criminal court. I didn't answer. I didn't even look back. I kept walking. My mother was in the hallway with my children. The court had arranged for them to be brought from school so they could go directly home with me. Marisol saw me first. She froze, uncertainty all over her face. 8 months of being told that mommy left them, that mommy didn't want them. Doubt doesn't vanish overnight. Then Theo spotted me. He bolted down the hall and slammed into my legs so hard I almost toppled. Mommy, he said, looking up at me. Are we going home with you? Yes, baby, I said. We're going home. Marisol walked toward us more slowly, still cautious. I knelt and held out my arms. She hesitated only a second before stepping into them and burying her face in my shoulder. I knew you didn't leave us, she whispered. I knew Daddy was lying, I just didn't know how to say it. I wrapped both of them up and finally let myself cry in that courthouse hallway. For the first time since this nightmare began, my tears weren't from despair. They were from relief, from victory, from a mother who had fought like hell to get her children back. Everything unraveled quickly after that. Within a week of the hearing, Kendra left Brendan. Once she understood the money was gone and criminal charges were looming, her devotion evaporated. Apparently, love is highly sensitive to credit limits. Constance got a letter from the IRS about those consulting payments. She deleted all of her social media, no more blessed posts. Brendan's lawyer withdrew from the case and faced his own bar investigation for possibly helping hide assets, and Brendan himself. Last I heard, he updated his dating profile to say he was going through some life changes, which I suppose is accurate if you count losing your house, your kids, your girlfriend. Most of your money and possibly your freedom as life changes. 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my home. My home, the same one I'd walked out of 8 months earlier as a visitor. Now it was legally, fully mine. I watched my children in the backyard. The same yard where I'd taught Marisol to ride her bike. The same one where I'd pushed Theo on the swing for what felt like hours some afternoons. Inside, my mother was in the kitchen, cooking dinner. Paloma was there too, moving quietly, carefully. We weren't fixed. Not yet. The trust she'd broken would take years to rebuild if it ever fully could, but we were trying. Family is messy. Forgiveness is harder. We were taking both slowly, one day at a time. The sun was setting over Oceanside, casting everything in warm gold and pink. I thought about the woman I'd been a year earlier. The woman who believed that love meant surrendering control, who mistook being controlled for being cherished. She was gone. The best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. The best revenge is rebuilding everything they tried to take and making it stronger than they ever imagined. Brendan Holloway had laughed at me in court. He'd told me I'd be lucky to see my children twice a month under supervision. He thought he'd won. He was wrong. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now so you don't miss the best parts. I think you'll love them. See you in the next one.